You know the feeling when something doesn't belong? Like walking into your own kitchen and noticing the fridge hums differently or that one mug isn't where you left it. That's how it felt the moment I stepped through the door that Thursday evening after coming back from a week in Seattle. Something in the house felt off. Not messy. Not loud. Just off. I dropped my carry-on by the coat rack and kicked off my shoes like I always did. The hallway lights were on, which was unusual. Laura usually turned everything off unless she was home. But the house was empty. Quiet. Our place had a way of holding silence like it was waiting for you to notice it. Then I saw it. A Polaroid photo. Sitting right there on the cabinet next to the basket we toss our keys in. It wasn't there when I left. I knew that with the same certainty I knew the worn pattern in our hallway rug. This wasn't something you overlooked. I picked it up. There was Laura, sitting cross-legged on what looked like the edge of a bed. She was wearing her blue pajama set, the one she'd had for years. The cotton faded a little at the seams. A glass of red wine dangled loosely from her fingers. Her hair was messy in a way that looked intentional, the kind of mess that comes after a long, laughing night. She was smiling, but not at the camera. Her gaze was turned slightly off-frame. A man's hand rested on her thigh. I stared at it for a good minute. It wasn't mine. I know that might sound obvious, but it hit me in pieces. First, the wedding band was missing. Then I noticed the wrist. It was lean, fair-skinned, veins slightly raised, not like mine. The fingernails were too neat, trimmed carefully like someone who worked at a desk all day, not building systems in an industrial zone like I did. And behind her, God, it wasn't our bedroom. That was the final punch. The headboard was some dark walnut veneer, generic but upscale. The walls had that muted taupe color hotels always used to feel classy. The lamps on the nightstand were identical, symmetrical. Perfect in that way only corporate hotel rooms are. This wasn't our space. This wasn't our life. I flipped the photo over. Written in black Sharpie, in handwriting that wasn't hers, or maybe was, but deliberately casual, was a short sentence. Like Salt Lake, only better. Salt Lake. We'd gone there last year. Some retreat she wanted to try. Wellness something. She'd come back talking about boundaries and energy centers. I'd nodded along, trying to be supportive, not really getting it. She said it was good for her. That she needed time to reconnect with herself. I didn't think much of it then. I think about it now. I placed the photo back down. Then, after a pause, I slipped it into the drawer where I keep chargers and old receipts I'll never file. Not hidden exactly. Just set aside. Like I needed it to exist somewhere I could revisit when I decided what the hell it meant. Laura came home around 6:30. I heard the garage door rumble, then her footsteps, light, familiar, confident. She walked in with her gym bag slung over her shoulder, wearing yoga leggings, hair pulled back into a high bun, a smoothie in one hand and her phone in the other. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was different. "How was the trip?" she asked, already half scrolling through something on her screen. I didn't answer. Not right away. I walked back to the hallway and pulled out the Polaroid. "Hey, this was on the cabinet. What's this from?" She looked up. Just for a second. Her eyes went from the photo to me, then back to the photo. And then came the pause, the tiniest hitch in her breath. You could miss it if you didn't know her. I knew her. Or thought I did. "Oh my God," she laughed. That's from Tahoe. Kira brought one of those old cameras to the bachelorette thing we did last year. She reached for it like she was about to toss it in the trash, but I didn't let go. She went on. "We were being dumb, doing like fake romance novel poses. I think that was Sam's boyfriend's hand? Or maybe someone from the hotel staff we roped into playing along. Totally stupid. We had wine, it was late. You know how girls get when we're drunk and bored." Her voice was so light. Like she was already over it. Like I was the weird one for even asking. "Okay," I said. She smiled and kissed me again, this time on the forehead, before heading toward the kitchen. "Do you want me to make the ginger tofu thing you like? I got fresh cilantro." I nodded, followed her in, and watched as she unpacked groceries like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. She moved through the kitchen like always, chopping, washing, humming slightly to herself. But something about it felt rehearsed. The whole moment, now that I replayed it, had felt prepared. And that's what got to me most. There was no, "Where did you find this?" No, "What is this doing here?" No hint of confusion. No curiosity. Not even the kind of defensive irritation someone gets when they're wrongly accused. No, Laura knew what it was the second she saw it. That photo wasn't a joke. It wasn't from Tahoe. I had a memory for these things, and she didn't own that pajama set until after that trip. And besides, I'd seen her come back from Tahoe. Exhausted. Hungover. Annoyed by someone's drama. No mention of Polaroids or jokes or romance novel role-playing. She'd made it up. quickly and smoothly, which means she'd rehearsed. That was the part that sat with me the longest. Not the hand, not the hotel room, not even the scrawled message on the back. It was the performance. How clean it was. How practiced. It meant there were other moments like this I'd missed. Other rehearsals. Other deflections. Later that night, as we were watching TV, some baking competition she loved, I glanced at her sideways. She was curled up beside me, laughing at the screen, tapping something on her phone with her thumb, screen tilted just slightly out of my line of sight. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Something I didn't want to admit. I didn't trust her. Not fully. Not anymore. You ever have one of those moments where a switch flips in your brain and suddenly everything that didn't make sense starts falling into place? That's what that photo did. It was like turning on a light in a room I didn't know was dark. And now everything looked different. Not just the photo. Everything leading up to it. Stuff I'd overlooked, brushed off, explained away because I trusted her. Or maybe because I wanted to. That night, after Laura went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my head in my hands. The Polaroid was back in the drawer, but the image burned itself into my mind. Her posture. The way she smiled. The comfort in that room. It wasn't a first-time moment. That was something ongoing. Familiar. And I couldn't pretend otherwise anymore. I started running the timeline backward in my head. The first shift had been subtle. Maybe 5 months ago? 6? It started with her phone. Laura used to leave it everywhere, on the couch, the bathroom counter, the kitchen island. She never cared who saw her screen. She was the type to hand it over mid-text and say, "Can you Google that for me?" like it was a shared object. But somewhere along the way it became an extension of her body. Always in her hand, or if not, screen down. I remember noticing that, the new habit of flipping it over, even when it buzzed, even when it didn't. Like she was protecting it. Guarding it. Then there was the new passcode. We used to share ours. I knew hers, she knew mine. That was just how it was. At some point I realized hers had changed. I'd asked casually, thinking maybe it reset during an update or something. She smiled and said, "Oh yeah, I changed it when I went to that spa weekend in Napa. They made us lock our devices during sessions. It's nothing." It felt like nothing at the time. Now it felt like a lock on a door I hadn't realized I was being kept out of. There were other things too. Her retreats multiplied. First it was one wellness trip in the spring. Then another. Then a full weekend she said was just for me, no phone, no distractions. When she came home she looked refreshed, sure, but also different. Lighter. Like a burden had been lifted. Except I didn't know what that burden was. And she never shared much. I used to get photos when she traveled. Selfies. Mountain *TS. A smoothie bowl she was proud of. That stopped too. When I asked about it, she told me she was trying to be more present. She said she realized always documenting life made her feel disconnected from it. I told her that sounded smart. Mature. But later that week, I saw her post a picture to her private Instagram. One I wasn't tagged in. She said it was just for her girls. That it didn't mean anything. But everything was starting to mean something. She came home from one of those trips wearing earrings I didn't recognize. They were delicate, silver, and she claimed they were part of a gift bag from the event. Another time, it was a scarf she said she'd found in a local boutique. Then a pendant I hadn't seen before. Always small things. Always with easy explanations. But I'd been with Laura long enough to know she didn't buy jewelry on impulse. She barely wore any before all this. And then there was the smell. Not perfume. Cologne. It clung to her hair once when she hugged me the night she got back from a leadership weekend. She said it must have come from the Uber driver. I believed her. Now, I'm not so sure. She didn't ask about my day anymore. It was small, but I noticed. She used to check in every afternoon. "How's work? Did the install go okay? How's your back?" She used to care. Or maybe she still did, but it wasn't directed at me anymore. I'd ask her how her day was, and she'd give these vague, non-committal answers. Busy. The usual. Then she'd pivot to something unrelated. Yoga. Her friend's dog. The weather. She never stayed in the space where we used to live. Those little check-ins that were the glue of our relationship. Gone. I didn't know when we stopped eating together. She used to wait for me. I'd text if I was running late and she'd say, "No problem. I'll heat it up." Lately, dinner was already over when I got home. She said she needed to eat earlier. For her digestion. And maybe she did. But suddenly everything she said started to sound like a cover story. She'd picked up new phrases, too. Words I'd never heard her use in the 12 years we'd been together. She talked about emotional labor and holding space and personal autonomy. She said she didn't want to be responsible for managing other people's feelings. She said she was setting boundaries. It sounded like therapy speak, except Laura had never been to therapy. Or at least not that I knew of. But someone had told her these things. Someone had given her a new language. And she was using it to build a wall between us. Our bedroom had changed, too. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way. There was no screaming or slamming doors. It just got quiet. We used to lie in bed and talk until we fell asleep. Stupid things. What movie we wanted to see. What kind of dog we'd get when we finally moved out of the city. I missed those conversations more than anything. Now she'd scroll until midnight or fall asleep with a podcast playing in her ears. The lights stayed off more often. The little touches faded. She stopped reaching for me in the mornings. And I stopped asking why. I thought maybe it was stress. Or hormones. Or burnout. I read articles, tried to be understanding. I bought her favorite tea, made dinner more often, offered to help her plan the next trip. She smiled, said I was sweet. But her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. The last time I touched her and she didn't flinch felt like a long time ago. And yet, despite everything, I didn't say a word. I wanted to believe that if I waited it out, we'd come back around. We'd done it before, hit rough patches and come through stronger. But now, looking back, I wonder if I was just scared. Scared to ask the question I didn't want the answer to. The photo was the first undeniable crack in the dam. And once it opened, every drop of suspicion I'd held back came flooding through. I started watching her differently. Not with anger. Not even jealousy. More like curiosity. As if I was observing a person I used to know, trying to see where the old her ended and this new version began. One night, she told me she had to go out of town for an architecture symposium. Sacramento, 3 days. She barely looked up from her phone when she mentioned it. No invitation for me to join. No real details. I nodded, told her to have a good time. Then I opened a new browser tab and started looking at flights. I didn't know exactly what I was hoping to find. But I knew I couldn't sit in our quiet house, pretending I wasn't being lied to. Not anymore. The day after Laura told me about the Sacramento symposium, I booked my own ticket. She said it was a professional development thing, networking, panels, a chance to reconnect with her field. She used to talk about architecture with this spark in her eyes. Now, when she mentioned it, her face didn't light up. She barely made eye contact. I waited a full 24 hours after she left before I followed. Felt ridiculous at first. Like something out of a movie. Who does this? Who secretly books a flight and follows their own wife to another city? But it didn't feel dramatic. It felt necessary. The kind of thing you do when your gut has been screaming for weeks and your heart just needs proof. Not hope. Not reassurance. Just something solid. I checked into the same hotel she mentioned, the Sterling, just off the main downtown strip. Expensive, modern, the kind of place you book when you want clean lines and no questions. I used a different last name and paid in cash for the room. Paranoid? Maybe. But I didn't want to risk anything that might tip her off. If I was going to find the truth, I needed to stay invisible. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat by the window, lights off, watching the quiet Sacramento streets pulse with the orange glow of street lamps. I thought about the first time Laura and I came to California together. How we walked along the coast for hours, eating saltwater taffy and pretending we lived in one of those beach houses with wraparound decks. I thought about the life we built back home, the routines, the laughs, the things I thought were unshakable. And then I thought about the man in the Polaroid, the one with his hand on her thigh, the one who knew what hotel sheets she slept in. The next morning I waited. I didn't know what he looked like, at least not fully, just a hand. But that hand told me enough. The skin tone, the shape, the absence of a ring. It gave me a silhouette to watch for. By 2 p.m. she hadn't shown. I checked the lobby, the lounge, the cafe down the block. I felt like a ghost in my own life, hovering on the edges of things, waiting for a moment that would wreck me. It came just after 4. I spotted her through the glass doors, walking in beside a man in a light gray suit. Tall, slim, salt and pepper hair. That same hand. Laura was smiling. Not the quick, polite smile she wore at dinner parties. This was different. She looked relaxed. Open. Like she dropped some invisible weight she always carried around me. She touched his arm casually like it wasn't the first time. Like it wouldn't be the last. They stopped at the bar just off the lobby. Sat side by side. Close enough to touch. Close enough to lean in and speak softly. He ordered drinks while she laughed at something he said. Her hand brushed his shoulder. He reached up to tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear. That was when I knew. There was no mistaking what this was. No more room for interpretation. This wasn't networking. This wasn't professional. This wasn't anything she could explain away with therapy words or emotional boundaries. She was with him. She had been with him. The Polaroid hadn't been a one-time mistake or a long-ago memory. It was a breadcrumb in a trail that led here. They kissed. Not some dramatic movie moment. Not something reckless or wild. Just a quiet, familiar press of lips. Comfortable. Like they'd done it before. Like they'd do it again. I didn't move. I didn't make a scene. I didn't rush over or scream or demand answers. I just stood there, a few feet back from the frosted glass, and watched my wife kiss another man in a hotel bar 200 miles from our home. Then I raised my phone. I took one photo. Just one. It caught her profile, the way she leaned in, the blur of his hand on her lower back. The bartender in the background, pretending not to notice. That was all I needed. I turned and walked out. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but I kept walking. My hands were trembling, but not from rage. From clarity. I had what I came for. The image. The truth. The line in the sand between doubt and knowing. I didn't go back to my room. I caught a cab straight to the airport and booked the first flight home. I didn't even care about the cost. I just needed distance. I needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else, that didn't smell like her perfume or the faint citrus cologne he wore. On the flight, I stared out the window while the sun dipped behind the clouds. I kept thinking, this is what endings feel like. Not explosions. Not tears. Just silence and the weight of knowing something has already broken. By the time I landed, it was late. The house was dark when I got in. The way it always was when she traveled. But now that darkness felt different. Not empty. Not quiet. Abandoned. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into a pillow. I just walked through the rooms of our home and noticed the things I'd stopped seeing: framed photos, souvenirs from trips that now felt like lies, her handwriting on sticky notes by the fridge. And then I opened my laptop. I uploaded the photo. I stared at it, zoomed in, then zoomed out. I looked at her face. The way she held herself. The way she tilted toward him without hesitation. No tension. No guilt. Just ease. That image took up the full screen. I didn't send it to her. I didn't confront her. I didn't draft a dramatic message or call a friend to unload. I just sat there in the glow of the monitor and accepted what I hadn't wanted to see. She was gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally? She had left a long time ago. And all I'd been doing since then was trying to hold onto something that didn't want to be held. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because we were fighting. Not because she wasn't there. But because the bed felt like a stage set for a life that had already ended. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was floating above my own life. The kind of disassociation you read about in trauma books. Every thought I had, every heartbeat felt like it belonged to someone else. But my body was already making decisions. Quiet, cold ones. I woke up around 6 a.m. Still dark. No texts. No missed calls. Laura wouldn't be back for another 2 days, assuming she stuck to the cover story. She probably thought she still had time. That the lie was still intact. That I was sitting at home, clueless, eating leftovers and watching football reruns while she played pretend in a hotel bar with the man whose hand had already crossed every boundary that mattered. But I wasn't clueless anymore. And I was done waiting. I started with the accounts. We'd always shared everything: banking, subscriptions, calendars, even the grocery app. Not because we had to, but because that was the kind of couple we were. Transparent. Trusting. Equal. Or at least, that's what I thought. Now those connections felt like liabilities. So I began to cut the threads. First, I logged into the bank. I opened a new savings account under just my name. Transferred half of our joint balance into it. Not to be vindictive. Just fair. Just protected. I didn't want her draining the account while I was still trying to find my footing. I left her half untouched and I took what I had a right to. Then the passwords. Our Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Spotify gone. Changed. Two-factor authentication. New email routes. I made a list of everything that tied us digitally and severed each link like I was performing surgery. Next came the devices. I went through the house, our laptops, tablets, even the smart speakers, and performed a digital cleanse. I signed her out of every account we shared. I removed her profile from our thermostat app. I disconnected her number from our home Wi-Fi router. It was petty. I know that. But it felt necessary. Like I was reclaiming territory 1 square foot at a time. By 9 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed paperwork. I downloaded every credit card statement from the past year. I wasn't looking for more evidence. I already had what I needed, but something in me wanted to know the full extent. What else had she built in secret? I highlighted hotel charges. Gas stations in towns she never mentioned. Plane tickets under the name of workshops I couldn't verify. It was all there, hiding in plain sight. The deceit wasn't loud. It was quiet. Methodical. She'd done this in a way that required practice. Planning. Maybe even help. That thought stung more than anything. I paused long enough to make coffee. Black. Bitter. I didn't feel like adding cream today. I needed the edge. Needed to stay sharp. That's when I started packing. Not my things, hers. I went through the bedroom, pulled open her drawers, and started folding. I didn't touch anything violently. I didn't throw or rip or scream. I just moved like someone checking out of a hotel after a long stay. Shirt by shirt. Drawer by drawer. Her jewelry box. Her hairbrush. Her favorite mug. Everything went into boxes I labeled by room, closet, bathroom, desk. The wedding album I left out. Not out of sentiment, but because I wanted her to see it. I placed it on the dining room table, closed, centered. A relic from a life she'd already exited. Then I wrote the note. I didn't want to text her. Didn't want a phone call, an argument, a tearful half-truth in real time. I wanted control. Stillness. So I took a sheet of paper, clean white printer stock, and wrote. You made your decision. This is mine. The house will be yours to collect from. Just text me when you're ready. Don't call. Jay. No accusation. No insult. No explanation. Just the simple truth. By noon I was done. The house looked emptier even though it wasn't. Her presence had always filled a room, her books on the coffee table, her oversized hoodie draped over the back of a chair, her voice humming as she watered the plants. Now, those things were boxed, stacked, absent. I walked through the space one last time. Not like someone leaving home, but like someone double-checking for anything they forgot. A charger. A scarf. A part of myself. Then I took off my wedding ring. It had become a phantom limb by then. I'd stopped feeling it. But when I pulled it off, the groove beneath it on my finger looked pale. Raw. Like it had protected the skin beneath from oxygen and now the air hurt. I placed the ring on the counter next to the note. And then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't take her car off the insurance. I didn't change the locks. I just stepped outside into the cold and walked away. That first night on my own, I slept at a cheap rental in town. I didn't go far. I didn't need space and miles, I needed space and meaning. Somewhere that didn't have her in the walls. Somewhere where silence didn't sound like waiting. I lay on the unfamiliar mattress and stared at the popcorn ceiling and thought, this is what freedom feels like. But it didn't feel good. Not yet. It just felt necessary. She texted me the next morning. Hey, can we talk? I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to clarify. The silence I'd gotten from her over the past few months had trained me well. And now it was her turn to feel the absence. Over the next 2 days, she sent more messages. First, neutral. I saw your note. I'm confused. What's going on? Then, gentle. Josh, please. Let's talk. I feel like something's wrong. Then, agitated. Seriously? You're just going to ghost me? After everything? Then, finally, reflective. I don't know what to say. I know I haven't been myself. I know we've been distant. I didn't want this. I just got lost. Somewhere along the way. Still, no mention of him. No reference to the bar. Or the kiss. Or the months of deception. Just vague emotional summaries and carefully worded regrets. I muted the thread. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was just done. There's a strange kind of peace that comes from knowing you've stopped lying to yourself. From stepping out of a story you didn't write, a role you didn't sign up for. And that peace, it doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, just like she did when she left me. The first message came just after noon on Monday. Hey, I got back. Can we talk? That was it. No punctuation on the second sentence. Just a casual ask. As if what was waiting for her when she walked through the front door was a misunderstanding. Not a line drawn in ink and silence. I'd left that morning. Early. before she could arrive and turn the house into a courtroom, before she could start crying or spinning the story or saying things that sounded like remorse but weren't. I wasn't going to let her be the narrator anymore. I had lived too long in that space, being told things were fine when they weren't, being handed scraps of honesty like I should be grateful for the effort. So when that message buzzed on my phone, I didn't open it. I saw the preview, read the words, and let the notifications slide up and vanish. I knew what it would say or close enough. I didn't need to read every character to understand the shape of it. She kept trying. Not in a flood, but in waves. Her style. By the end of the day, there were 5 new messages. I'm home. The boxes. Was that really necessary? Why would you move my things out like that without saying anything? Is this about the Sacramento trip? I feel like you're being really cold. I don't understand. Please, Josh. I'm trying here. Don't just shut me out. Each one more desperate than the last, but still dancing around the point. Still avoiding the truth. She never mentioned the photo, or the man, or the fact that I'd seen them together, sitting too close in a hotel lounge like the world owed them no discretion. It's strange what people will leave out when they're trying to rewrite the ending. On Tuesday, the tone shifted. I feel like I've been unraveling for months. I didn't even see it happening. It wasn't about anyone else, I swear. It was about me. I didn't feel real anymore. You have no idea how lonely I've been. I needed to remember what it felt like to be a person. Not just a wife or someone's support system. That was when the therapy speak returned. The language she'd been using for weeks before this all came to a head. I've been doing a lot of work on myself. I've been trying to process the guilt I carry and how I've projected that onto us. I felt invisible, Josh. I felt erased. You don't have to respond. I just hope you can hear me. I'm trying to own this. That one got to me, not because it was noble, but because it was so carefully constructed. She wanted me to see the pain, the inner struggle, the lostness. But not once, did she write, I kissed someone else. I lied to you. I cheated. Because that would require her to name it. And naming it would mean claiming it. Wednesday came and went without a single new message. A full day of silence from her. I'd muted her thread by then, but I still checked. Not because I was tempted to answer, but because I wanted to see which version of Laura would show up next. And on Thursday, she did. I've been going back through everything in my head. When it started. I keep coming up with fragments. It wasn't just one thing. It was years of little things. The late nights. The way we stopped checking in with each other. The way I stopped laughing. You always felt so steady. Like you didn't need anything. And I resented you for that. That line hit harder than I expected. Because it wasn't wrong. I was steady. I didn't need much. I took pride in that. I thought being the stable one, the one who didn't break down or spiral or ask for too much, was what made me a good partner. I thought being her anchor would make her feel safe. I didn't realize she'd start to hate the doc just because she wanted to drift. But even in that message, even in that admission, she never once said the man's name. Never once referenced the hotel, the drinks, the kiss, the Polaroid, Sacramento. None of it. It was like she was trying to give me every emotion but accountability. Like I'd accept her sadness in place of the truth. I didn't. I kept reading. Quietly. Detached. Like a stranger monitoring a story he used to star in. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not the sharp, explosive kind. What I felt was dull. Resigned. The kind of pain that settles into your bones when you realize someone's version of working through it means skipping the parts that matter most. By Friday, the messages were less frequent. Just one. I miss you. 3 words. After all the others, this one felt like the most dishonest. Because if she missed me, truly missed me, she wouldn't have needed a hotel room to remember how to feel alive. I went for a walk that evening. First one in a while. Through the neighborhood we'd lived in for 6 years. Past the little coffee shop we used to sit outside of on Sunday mornings. Past the park where we once talked about kids, names we liked, middle names we didn't. Past the bookstore where she bought me my first copy of Raymond Carver and told me, "You'll like this, he makes things feel small in a good way." The memory didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It just felt neutral. Like I was walking through a museum of someone else's life. When I got back, I opened her thread and reread every message. Not once did she say the words, "I'm sorry I betrayed you. I hurt you. I chose someone else." It was always about her pain, her identity, her search for something unnamed. I didn't owe her a reply. Not because I was punishing her, but because she hadn't earned one. I remember reading somewhere that silence can be a mirror, that when you refuse to speak, people see themselves in the quiet. And maybe that's what I was doing, holding up the mirror, letting her sit in the space where I used to fill in the blanks for her. Because for years I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I completed her half-truths. I accepted the gaps in her stories and filled them with love. Yeah? I was done writing her lines. Saturday, no messages. Sunday, just one. I understand why you're not answering, but I hope you'll at least read this. Attached was a document. A PDF. 5 pages. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. I didn't know what I expected, a list of explanations maybe. A diary dump. A monologue trying to wrap a bow around a broken vow. What I got was a confession. And that changed everything.